So, just about 2 days ago, I finished reading Unsouled by Wight, book number one of Cradle. And I needed to talk about it because this was so much fun. So I haven't been reviewing here on YouTube for a couple months because I've mostly been reading nonfiction through the winter. Um, well, I mean, I've still been reading fantasy, but it's been like some really big, hefty books that I haven't finished yet. I've got one of the Malazan books going, and I haven't been reviewing those on here because I started reading that series before I was doing YouTube. And then I've got another really big, long fantasy book that will be on here soon. But this is the first fiction book that I've finished in a while, so that's why it's been a minute. But I read this so fast. I checked it out from the library Monday afternoon. I read a big chunk Monday night. I read an even bigger chunk Tuesday night, and then on Wednesday, it's Friday as of recording this. Just to put it in context, so checked it out Monday, read it Monday night, Tuesday night. On Wednesday, I actually brought it to work so that I could read during my lunch break, and I finished it during my lunch break on Wednesday. So it's been about 2 days, and I read this in like 2.5 days, basically. No, 1.5, because if I had read it Wednesday night, that would be 2 days. So yeah, this went really fast. I mean, it's not super long. It's like just shy of 300 pages, and it is YA, so not like the densest writing style or anything. You would expect to get through it quickly, but still, even taking that into consideration, this is like the fastest I've read something in a long time, and the most excited I've been about a book in a long time. So this was my first experience with progression fantasy, which is a subgenre of fantasy that's kind of only been around for like just under a decade, really. People have been talking about it, and this is one of the authors who kind of pioneered it. And in particular, Will Wight is known for a subgenre of progression fantasy called cultivation fantasy. So I'm going to try to define these terms if you're not familiar with them, but bear in mind that I wasn't familiar with these terms like a month ago. So progression fantasy is like tends to be inspired by video games, and if it's like very explicitly video gamey, that's like people call that lit RPG, or game lit sometimes. But progression fantasy is like the idea of the main character sort of leveling up as the series goes on, and like gaining more and more power. And then cultivation fantasy is kind of a version of that rather than being inspired by video games, um, or like still kind of video gamey, but more so is inspired by like Chinese martial arts fiction, and like cultivation cultivation fiction in China, which is like very heavily inspired by Taoist and Buddhist mythology and like Taoist and Buddhist meditation. So that's kind of what this is part of. So it was my first exposure to that genre. That's why I checked it out from the library, because I was like, I don't know if I'm even going to be into this. So I was like, rather than buying it, I'll check it out. Um, there's a library near me that has the whole series, so I can just do it that way. And I'm kind of immediately regretting that, because I'm immediately feeling like this is a series that I would reread, because I get through it so quickly and it's so much fun. Might as well do it just like in between some of my longer and more serious reads. I saw another YouTube book reviewer, BellTube, who I recently started watching. He said that progression fantasy is almost like a literary form of snack food, and I think that's a good analogy. Um, it's like you don't expect it to be the most nourishing thing in the world. It's not very complex, but there's nothing wrong with it, and it's a whole lot of fun. And yeah, I just um, I was really excited about this one. I immediately put the second and third book of the series on hold at the library. They are currently in transit from their home library to my local library, so hopefully I'll be picking those up in a couple days. I'm not going to do a review for every individual book, but maybe like every two or three. So to talk about more specifics of this book, the setting is very heavily inspired by Chinese fiction and Chinese mythology. Just sort of in the vibe, not so much in the specifics of it. The author is not Chinese, and I don't know how knowledgeable he is about like Chinese culture or mythology or anything, but like the general like vibe of it is inspired specifically by cultivation fiction, which is kind of a big thing in China. I used to play a like mobile game RPG that was developed in China that was like cultivation based. Like your character would meditate to get more powers. It was kind of interesting. So that's kind of how the magic system in this setting works. Characters have like spiritual energy that they can cultivate by meditating and using different meditation techniques, and then that gives them the various magical abilities that we see in the book. But our main character in this book is born with sort of a deficiency of that spiritual energy, and his culture in one corner of the setting interprets that as him having been born without a soul. We learn later in the book that that's not exactly true, and actually he could eventually be very powerful. He just has to, he's kind of starting from a disadvantage, but his culture where he's born interprets that as him not having a soul, and he'll never be able to learn any of these magical abilities. So this book is sort of him like learning how to navigate through the world without having any kind of magical abilities, and then eventually he realizes, oh wait, I actually can learn some of this stuff. I'm just starting from like a lower starting point than most people. So it's really exciting to see the main character like grow gradually more powerful as the book goes on. The setting is really interesting. I like the magic system. It's not what I'm used to. I've never read progression fantasy or cultivation fantasy before, as I said. But I really liked it. It was a whole lot of fun. As far as like character development and like narrative structure, it's definitely like it's heavier on the character's magical powers developing, and not so much. I don't want to say that it's not completely not got any character development, but it's not like a character driven story necessarily. Our main character is pretty compelling. I don't know if really many of the other characters have a whole lot of like personality developed in the book, but that's fine. That's not what this book is trying to be. And I didn't feel myself lacking that as I was reading it. It's something I've like reflected on, but again, it was so much fun and I read it so fast that that didn't seem to matter in the moment. There's definitely some interesting characters in terms of just like how they're described. Cat cameo. Hi. But yeah, you know, it really is like playing a video game, just with like you don't have to actually be the one playing. You know, you're just kind of watching the author develop this character leveling up. I'm excited to read more of it. I don't have a whole lot else to say. I was just really excited and wanted to talk about it real quick. But I think what I'm probably going to do, because there's 12 books, I think I'll make another video talking about how my thoughts and feelings about this series have developed after the second and third book. And then after that, I'll do groups of 3. So I'll do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, 11, 12. I don't know. I'll do the one after 2 and 3, and then after that we'll see. I'd like to do the groups of 3, but maybe if it feels like if I'm not as excited about it, or maybe if I am excited but not a whole lot has changed in terms of what I have to say about the series, then maybe I'll just do 2 and 3 and then do another video at the end of the whole series. I don't know. I expect to get through it pretty quickly, as long as nobody else at the library checks out the whole series while I'm reading 2 and 3. And even if they do, I'll get them, you know, a couple weeks later when they're due back. So yeah, and I think I do see myself rereading this someday. Again, I kind of regret going the library route because I think this is something that would be worth owning for me, but I'll buy it whenever I do my first reread, and then I'll have it for if I ever want to do additional rereads. Yeah, as far as what's coming up on the channel, I've got some big books that I'm in the middle of, so I don't know how much else of my TBR I'm going to get through in the coming weeks, but I have been listening to an audiobook that I bought of all of the Conan the Barbarian short stories. If I get through that, which I probably will in the next month or so, just listening to it here and there during breaks at work, I would like to do a video kind of talking about my perception of Conan as a whole and like which specific stories I liked and which ones I didn't like. That would be cool. I'd like to talk about that. So that'll be coming up at some point. Yeah. Okay, she's trying to bite me now. I think I am done for today.